Today's guest is one of Australia's most respected visual storytellers. For more than 2 decades, Trent Mitchell has been documenting the people, places, landscapes and quirks that make Australia what it is. Whether he's shooting the power of the ocean, capturing fleeting encounters on a remote country road, or finding beauty in the mundane, Trent has a remarkable ability to create images that feel both deeply personal and unmistakably Australian. His acclaimed project and photo book, Australian Lustre, has struck a chord with Australians by capturing the nostalgia, humour, contradictions, and the beauty of life in everyday Australia. Trent Mitchell, welcome to the Shotgun Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure, mate. Absolute pleasure. If anyone knows travel and knows Australia, I reckon it's you. You've done some serious Ks across this place.
Yeah, over the years, I've definitely put the Ks in. That's for sure. And yeah, there's still so much more to go and check out.
There is. So let's go back to the very beginning. You know, when you're a kid, what was it like growing up, and how do you reckon that's influenced your photography later in life?
Yeah, most definitely my childhood experiences of going to a caravan park on the central coast of New South Wales was really informative. My parents would take my sister and I up to a place called Budgie from Sydney every school holidays, and it was, pretty idealistic really. Shoes off for 2 weeks, riding pushies around the caravan park, fish and chips for lunch, fishing, swimming in the lake, at the beach, all of those things. And it was just really different to Sydney, and even the people we were hanging out with. And yeah, it was just really eye-opening as a kid. And I think it was like the very first taste of like life beyond, the city or urban environment in Sydney, in a metro area. And I was, just fell in love with that vibe for sure.
And then obviously you've spent a lot of time since then in metro areas. We're sitting up here on the Gold Coast now, which is now your home, but you still seem pretty drawn to that, I guess, regional lifestyle, at least in your personal photography.
Yeah, I think a big part of that was kind of shooting, surfing, and ending up in places around Oz that felt extremely remote, and the towns around those areas had a really unique feel to them, and I just feel drawn to experience that. And it's not just about, it is a bit of a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason. Like, actually getting to these places is half the beauty of the whole experience itself, of actually getting there and enjoying it. We've got such a huge, great country. I just love hitting the road and getting in that headspace that time and travel lets you tap into. I think it's just that sense of escapism and freedom is all part of it, and it's definitely a great way to experience life if you get the opportunity to go do it, for sure. That's the draw card for me, is just to get out of the hustle and bustle and slow down and experience life at a pace that kind of feels nice and right.
So photography's kind of given you that vehicle, or at least the excuse, to get out there and travel and do it for a job as well. How did you make your way into that? Because I know it wasn't your first career or anything like that. It was something you grew into.
So, bit of background on the other things that I've done in the past creatively is like graphic design and product design. I picked up a camera to kind of document my art processes in high school, and that curiosity was cracked open a bit later on in life as well. Doing graphic design, I just felt it was like a natural fit, right? Because you're making pages, or back then it was primarily print, and a lot of the assets I was working on involved photography, and the combination of text and images kind of just felt like a natural fit. So it's a skill that I wanted to expand on and get into, and I fell in love with it. Yeah, kind of all grew from there. I guess naturally was drawn to designing magazines, because that's like the perfect fit really of those two elements. And I was working in-house at a publishing company called Morrison Media, and if we're on deadline and editors needed like a little half-page shot for some reason, could be for the subscriptions page or letters page or a quick portrait of local talent, I'd whip out and get photos on deadline for them. And that's kind of how it all started. And I was just consistent and didn't f it up and just keep chipping away at that. And just built from there. It felt like a real natural progression and nothing that I really forced. And that's how it all kind of came about. Went from that into photo editing magazines to leaping out on my own as a freelance photographer. I got enough freelance income to make the leap, and I thought, yeah, why not? You only live once and all of that. And I gave myself the permission to go do it with the encouragement of a good friend of mine, Ted Grambo. He kind of lit a fuse under me to go pursue a photographic career as well. So that encouragement was so valuable to have.
Ted's obviously one of the greats in both surf, but also in fashion and within that industry as well. So it's not a bad mentor to sort of study under.
Yeah, he's most certainly is, and it is. We're really good mates. We talk pretty much every other day. I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of weird to have an idol become one of your best mates. And yeah, we're chatting creatively all the time, and it's really a mutual thing. Like I fire him up and vice versa. So we keep each other inspired and encouraged with our projects and what we're doing and our plans, and we're always checking in on each other. It's awesome.
Some car rental companies charge fees for things you didn't even know could be things. If you like that kind of thing, East Coast Car Rentals isn't for you. We don't do hidden fees. We do great cars, great service, great prices. eastcoastcarrentals.com.au.
So, obviously you were in that industry, in the surf industry, and that kind of, again, they gave you that vehicle to explore not just surf photography, but I guess ocean photography as well, early in your career. Since then, a lot of your recent work has almost literally turned 180 and turned west. Tell us a little bit about that transition from, focusing in on the ocean and, now you spend a lot of time out in rural Australia.
Well, it was blended in the beginning. So when I'd do surf editorial trips or whatever around Oz, like I mentioned before, we'd end up in remote areas, and I was equally fascinated by the towns we'd pass through or stop at or even stay. And I was always taking snapshots of that. I guess over time, like I built up a good library of these images, and once I recognized like patterns and like what I was actually pointing my camera at and why, I felt like my attention turned to that more as I was shooting less surf and having other life experiences and like responsibilities with a family and all of these different things. Like, I don't know, my curiosity has just naturally changed with what's been going on in my life. And that's like, it appears like maybe from an outside point of view that the work came just kind of out of nowhere, but it's a collection of 15 to 18, maybe even 20 years worth of work now that's been brought together in one place. But I'm still more fascinated to travel and document and make these types of photos. I feel like things are changing so much. I kind of want to capture it before it's all kind of gone, or just using photography as a tool to document the world, I guess, with things that I'm interested at the time of my life that feels appropriate. Just not around the ocean as much, so my attention's shifted.
And one thing that I've noticed and that I love about it is you manage to kind of seek out these parts of Australia that actually haven't changed as much as they have in urban. There's actually a bit of a contrast in a lot of your work, especially in the Australian Lustre series, where you might document in a more built up area that transition or that evolution of a suburb. this is what it was then, this is what it was now. But then juxtaposed to that, you'll revisit a location, 10, 15 years later in regional Australia, and it's much the same as it was probably even when we were kids.
Yeah, there's in Australian Lustre, I kind of wanted to use photography to illustrate time, and it was kind of a great vehicle to do that. And yeah, it's quite interesting how, the change of pace, say we're sitting here on the Goldie at the moment, Gold Coast, and the development here is just happening at a phenomenal rate. And, you'll look down a street every 6 months and there'll be a new building gone up or demolished. And yeah, it's just all happening so quickly. And then a contrast would be, say, revisiting Coober Pedy after 5 years. And I think, rephotographing a hills hoist out there it's still there. It's fallen over, but it's still freaking the same hills hoist and it's still there. Or like in Venus Bay, I was there recently in South Oz, and I find these quirky little corners in towns, just going through the back streets and stuff, and found this little pelican out the back of a building, and 10 years later, it's still there, but the only thing that's changed at all is that the bush has grown around it and it's almost disappeared. And the contrast is in the urban areas, it's like whole buildings have gone. And yeah, the visual differences are really significant rather than like subtle. Yeah.
I think it's interesting because, especially as a child, you do remember some of these landmarks. And if you were growing up on the Gold Coast, you might remember a particular building as a kid or a particular street. And 10 years later, that street might be entirely different. And it's hard to really connect back to your childhood and that nostalgic feeling that you grew up with. Whereas in those areas, you do, and you've kind of experienced it. And I think you've told that story a little bit where you can revisit somewhere and instantly bring back those vivid memories of your childhood because that hills hoist, or even, the dingo re-emerging at that service station that you visited in some of your work is all still there. And I think that's a big thing to a lot of people, is those visual cues to their childhood.
Yeah, those subtle things definitely trigger something in, people in general. Recognizing those things and capturing them is something that I really like to do. I'm not sure why. Yeah, it's quite funny. At the Nullarbor Servo recently, I was making photographs out there, and there was my initial photograph of that place was of a dingo stretching at I think it was pump 6 at the servo. And most 10 years on, it most definitely wasn't the same dingo. Yeah, they're still out there roaming that service station and randomly appear at times. And it's like hasn't changed one bit, but the place itself has, like, there's a new signs and new management, and French girls serving coffee in the servo, where I think the first time I visited, it was like your cliche grumpy Karen. So then, the environment hasn't changed. It's still like one of the flattest places in Australia. The dingoes are lurking and the weather's the same. And yeah, all of those different triggers are there, like, to make it feel like a timeless place too. So yeah, I like experiencing places over time. It's cool.
So one thing that I kind of see as like a repetitive, maybe not a theme, but a motif throughout a lot of your photos is there's like this comedic undertone to a lot of them, especially when it comes to people. It might be, a moment or a pose or something like that. Is that something that you're purposely looking for? How does that come about?
It's just my sense of humor coming through, and kind of like, I don't know, I kind of bring it back to like road trip banter with mates and how smart ass and sarcastic we would be with each other. Like, I kind of still carry that kind of feeling with me. And that's the lens I see the world with, is like just kind of like your typical banter with mates and smart assness, but I don't know, just keeping it feeling Australian. And I kind of do seek out those. It's funny. It's like when you want to buy a new car, I don't know, I drive a Caddy. So, I want to buy a Caddy. And then all you ever do is see Caddies on the road. And like, for me, photographically, it's like all I see is these weird little moments here and there all the time. And it's because I want to see them and that they appear for me somehow.
So obviously you've spent a lot of time on the road over the last few decades. Have you got like a favorite travel story or a funny travel story or anything that springs to mind?
Oh, geez. I don't know where to go with this. I got heaps. I think one that is fairly recent, kind of like a moment on the road that was just completely serendipitous and kind of speaks to like that and then Australiana and all the, roadside things. Was like a trip I did from Melbourne to Adelaide, and I went to the giant koala to photograph it, basically, and the road trip itself. So I pulled up at the giant koala and I found my spot. I was standing exactly where I wanted to be to take. I marked it on the ground with my foot, just put a little mark on the ground, went back to the car, grabbed my film camera and walked over, started loading my film up and getting ready to take some photographs, wait for the sun to hit in the right light. And then this mobile home turned up in the car park and parked right in front of exactly where I wanted to take the photograph from. And I'd just flown and driven out to this place in one hit. And I was like, I can't believe this has just happened. And I had to keep moving for the day. And I was like, oh, out. So I went back to the car and I was about to go back to the car and just wait for these guys to move so I could get my shot. And then I read on the back of the mobile home, it said in a big faded decal, "Home among the gum trees." And I was standing there in front of the big koala with a mobile home resting in front of it with a sticker, "Home among the gum trees." And I just couldn't believe what I was looking at. It just felt like, how does this happen? So it was a moment where it turned from my photo's ruined to wait a sec, this is one of the best photos I've ever potentially taken. So I shot 3 rolls of that one scene to make sure I kind of sometimes I'll shoot what I want and then I'll shoot a backup roll just in case that roll gets damaged or something. And then I'll shoot in another format. So I end up shooting quite a bit as a redundancy kind of thing. But yeah, that was a pretty cool little moment. But then, yeah, there's so many other ones with family and friends and stuff as well. But yeah, that's a funny little photographic one for sure.
And so you mentioned that you shoot a lot of your personal work on film. Is there a particular reason why you shoot film for your personal stuff and don't for your commercial stuff? What is it about that medium that you love?
I've just always never not shot film. If that makes sense. I started out shooting film and have never stopped. And a lot of the work that I was bringing together in Australian Lustre and around that has always been film, and I wanted it to feel cohesive. There were moments where I was like, oh, I'm just going to ditch this whole film thing and go completely digital. But yeah, there was a couple of years there where I was back and forth between it all. And I just, for the life of me, couldn't get it feeling exactly the same. And I had a moment of realization of I freaking love shooting film. I like the process. I love the cameras I use. They're rangefinder cameras. You're not looking through the lens. You're not looking at an EVF or using a big loud DSLR, light, nimble little cameras. And I like the fact that you can just take a photo and put the camera down and get on with the day. And I like the gap between taking the picture and getting the film back from the lab and the scans and stuff. It lets you detach from the moment that little bit more. And I mean, the results are incredible. Film looks and feels so good. And if I'm spending my time like doing personal work, I want to be doing shit that I absolutely enjoy.
Need a rental car now?
But want more flexibility when you pay?
At East Coast Car Rentals, you can book your next trip with PayPal's Pay in 4. Spread the cost over 4 interest-free payments and hit the road sooner. Book direct at eastcoastcarrentals.com.au.
So what's next for you? What can we expect from you next? Is it, a continuation of Australian Lustre? Have you got other projects that you're working on?
I'm mostly getting Australian Lustre still out there, and it's kind of, I finished the book, but it just feels like an ongoing thing for me. And I've come up with I do have a book project in mind. It's kind of like an extent, it's obviously photographs in the same vein as Australian Lustre, but just a bit of a tighter running theme, really. And that's all I can say for now until I don't want to start saying it yet because
these things could go in any different way.
Oh, maybe. No, this is definitely locked in. I've started writing the list and going through my archive and whatnot, and there's something there for sure. There's still a bit of legs left with Lustre, I reckon. So,
we look forward to the next one. But in the meantime, where can people find Australian Lustre? Where can they get themselves a copy?
On my website, trentmitchell.com, you'll find Australian Lustre, and there's social media posts about it if you want to check that out on Trent Mitchell Editions. That's my personal work Instagram. So those 2 places.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. Can't wait to see a new project, and can't wait to do more with you in the future with East Coast Car Rentals.
Yeah, thanks, mate. And it's been a pleasure, Ben.